This podcast is sponsored by the Tree of Life Memorials and Digital in Stone. This is a new platform to create digital memorials, environmental legacies, and fine art monuments. This way we could share the stories, preserve the memories, conserve the land, and connect the souls, because love never dies.
This podcast does not provide medical nor legal advice. Please listen to the complete disclosure at the end of the recording.
Hello and welcome to Everyone Dies, the podcast where we talk about serious illness, dying, death, and bereavement. I'm Marianne Natso, a nurse practitioner, and I use my experience from working as a nurse for 45 years to help answer your questions about what happens at the end of life.
And I'm Charlie Navarrete, an actor in New York City, and here to offer an every-person viewpoint to our podcast. We are both here because we believe that the more you know, the better prepared you are when a crisis hits and you have to make difficult decisions.
So welcome to this week's show. Please relax, get yourself something supportive to drink, some pie or some cake or chocolate bar. And thank you for spending the next hour with Charlie and me as we talk about preparing for death. Like the BBC, we see our show as offering entertainment, enlightenment, and education, and divided into three halves to address each of these goals. Our main topic is in the second half, so feel free to fast forward to that prattle-free zone. In the first half, Charlie has a new installment to our series about forgotten obituaries and the recipe of the week. In the second half, I'm going to talk about preparing for death and how doing so makes it so much easier for your family. Not that it's going to be easy, but we could make it easier. And in the third half, Charlie has an example of an original approach to advanced care planning. So Charlie, what's new?
Let's see here. Well, some of the cherry blossom trees have already sprung.
Wow.
Way early and are already beginning to die. And in Washington, speaking of death, this beautiful cherry tree festival and everything. How many? It's something like 150 of them are now gone because the water in the Potomac has risen so much. I mean, the trees are not underwater, but basically the roots now have been saturated with water, so they're essentially dead.
And why is the Potomac rising?
Climate change?
Really? Oh.
Oh, yeah, this is new thing. CC for short. Climate change.
Well, I live in Oklahoma, and we just don't believe in that stuff here.
Yes, so I've noticed. Oh, you crazy kids. Yeah, so that. Yeah. Actually, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I mean, Lower Manhattan, think financial district, is also sinking. A lot of that is landfills over, hundreds of years.
Right.
The buildings are so heavy, they are actually sinking.
It's like the Venice of the East.
Yeah, Venice of America. You wish it would be the Venice of America. Yeah.
Well, no, it's just sinking too.
Yeah.
Did you know that? Yeah.
Baby, it's all gone. It's all going. So, and when.
So Charlie, the optimist, is with us today.
Yes, and I'm optimistic because when the worst of it hits, you and I should be dead by then. So yeah, I'm not worried about me and you and me. But our youngins, our grandchildren, youngins, etc., etc.
And that's what I read is part of why kids that are like our kids' ages are not wanting to have babies. They feel and I've even talked with, kids and their friends, and they feel no confidence in the future. And they don't really want to bring a child into an unstable, uncertain
Yeah.
future.
I mean,
Good thing our parents never thought about that. They just did
popped
it.
them out.
Yeah. They didn't think
It
about it.
was a simpler time, kind of, in its own small way. It was a simpler time. It was a different time. So, for our first half, Overlooked is a series of obituaries about remarkable people whose deaths, beginning in 1851, went unreported in the New York Times. This week's overlooked death is Miss Cordell Jackson, a pioneering record label owner and engineer who played guitar in a raw and unapologetically abrasive way. Whatever song it was, she said, I always creamed it. Her long and mostly obscure musical career intersected briefly with American pop culture in the early 1990s, coinciding with her appearance in a popular beer commercial. A grandma, resplendent in a shiny ball gown and bouffant, peering through her old lady glasses while ferociously rocking out on a cherry red electric guitar, amp cranked up to 10. By then, she had been making music for more than half a century. She was born on July 15, 1923, in Patatock, Mississippi, a small city once known as a hideout for Jesse James' gang of outlaws in the 1800s. She took an early interest in music making, learning to play banjo, piano, upright bass, and harmonica. By age 12, she was sitting in her father's string band, the Patatock Ridge Runners. When I picked up the guitar, I could see it in their eyes. Little girls don't play guitar, she later recalled. I looked right at him and said, I do. Miss Jackson always claimed that she had been rocking out well before the men who would make rock and roll famous. If what I'm doing now is rock and roll or rockabilly or whatever, she told the newspaper, the Tulsa World, in 1992, then I was doing it when Elvis was a 1 year old. That's just a fact. In 1943, she married William Jackson, moved to Memphis, and began trying to scratch her way into the male dominated music scene. She eventually befriended and recorded demos with producer Sam Phillips, who would go on to start Sun Records. She grew impatient with Phillips, who saw her gender as an obstacle. So she created Moon Records, becoming one of the first women in America to record and produce their own music, some say the first, and securing her place in history. Cordell was immune to being told no, said country singer and songwriter Laura Cantrell. That was not typical for a woman, especially in the South. Recording sessions for Moon Records were held in Jackson's living room, where she engineered, produced, and released music by regional artists. Some of her own performances included 1958's Rock and Roll Christmas and Bebopper's Christmas. But neither she nor her roster of artists hit the big time. The 1960s and 70s saw her roving through a series of other kinds of work at a printing company, as an interior decorator with a real estate agency, as a DJ on the all-female Memphis station WHER, and running a junk shop. It wasn't until the early 1980s when she crossed paths with the musician, performance artist, and filmmaker Tav Falco that things changed for her. They met at a Western Sizzlin' Steakhouse in Memphis at a benefit. You remember those, Marianne? Yeah,
Absolutely.
I love those.
Absolutely. My great aunt always call and say, it's cookies.
Yes, very fond memories with those. Every guitar player in Memphis was there, Falco said in a video interview. That included Jackson, who approached him after hearing his band cover one of her originals, Dateless Night. The two became fast friends. He invited her to appear on bills with him and his band, and she accepted, despite the fact that, at almost 60, it was her first professional live gig. This was the beginning of the second act of Jackson's musical career, as she became among a certain set, an elder stateswoman of grungy thrash guitar. She headlined at colorful, now vanished rock clubs in New York City like CBGB, the Lone Star, and the Lakeside Lounge, as well as at Max's in Hoboken, New Jersey. She mostly played solo, but occasionally local musicians backed her up. There were no rehearsals, just let's go.
That's like us.
Off, yes. Ay, ay, ay. Off stage, Jackson was down to earth but proper and deeply religious. She did not curse and she did not drink, quote, anything but milk or water, she told Rocktober magazine in 1993. In an interview, she said that whenever she traveled, always in her yellow Cadillac, she disliked planes, it was with her own steak, her own milk, and giant jugs of tap water from Memphis, because she didn't trust any other kind. There was an unbridled ferocity to Jackson's playing, almost as though she were fighting with her guitar to give her what she wanted in an urgent, raw, and unapologetically abrasive way. Jackson didn't just break guitar strings, she broke picks. I've never been confused about what I was supposed to do while I was down here, she said in 1999. If I think of it, I do it. Miss Jackson died of pancreatic cancer on October 14, 2004, in Memphis. She was 81. Here we are, Marianne.
You know, I watched the video of her, and
I know, isn't that great?
she's like
Wow,
Minnie
yes.
Pearl with a guitar. You know, remember Minnie Pearl?
You know, I remember, and actually, I think she out Minnie Pearled
Yeah.
Minnie Pearl. Yeah, she was, well, what a great dame. And so, with our recipe this week, it is for lemon cloud cookies. Just imagine hanging around in heaven on a lemon cloud. What a great treat for your next funeral lunch. These lemon cookies have a bright lemony flavor and a super soft and cakey, in a good way, texture, thanks to the addition of sour cream in the dough. Bon ami. Oh, no, wait a minute. Hang on a second. Bon
You
appetit.
still got to work on your Julia
Damn
Child.
French. I know. Please go to our webpage for this week's recipe for lemon cloud cookies and additional resources for this program. Your tax-deductible donations are always welcome so that we can continue to offer you quality programming. Thank you in advance for making your donation at www.everyonedies.org. That's every, the number one, dies.org. Marianne?
Thanks, Charlie. You know, I read a wonderful article in the New York Times by a daughter, Shayna Feiberg, and illustrated by her mother, Julia Rothman, that was titled, I Asked My Mom If She Was Scared to Die. Did you see the article?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Terrific.
Wonderful. So her mom answered the question in this way. She said, not really, but I am prepared with my paperwork. I got to tell you, I just had to laugh. First, because though people say they're prepared to die, in experience, no one truly is. And how can we be? It's like being strapped into the largest roller coaster in the world and being asked if you're ready to ride. Well, yes and no. But the ride is starting anyway, and it's too late to get off. So you can white knuckle it and scream, or raise your arms over your head and enjoy yourself. But either way, you're taking the ride. It's the unknown of it all that leaves us with that feeling of waffling about being ready. For people who are sick, there are days when they'll tell you that they are just over it all. They're tired and they're ready to move on. I was at my sister's last chemo treatment, which turned out to be the day before she took an irrevocable turn for the worse. And she said, you know, if it weren't for this cancer, I feel pretty good. You know, I laughed then too. Yep, that pesky metastatic cancer really gets in the way of health. She was unable to swallow anything at this point, but on the way home from chemo, we stopped to get a White Castle hamburger. She
Mm.
chewed hers and spit it out into a napkin so that she could at least taste it. And then she told me food is overrated. Well, maybe, but not like castles. So, was she prepared to die? Not at all. The advance directive I had brought to her sat in her sewing basket, not completed. There was a major ruckus with our mother after she died because she had told her husband she wanted to be cremated. Despite the rule change, my mother still thought it was illegal for Catholics to be cremated. It just set off a huge mess that really could have been avoided. But even having end-stage metastatic cancer, some people do not want to do their paperwork. People feel that filling out an advance directive will mean that all the plugs will be pulled because there seems to be a lack of trust that when mixed with a fear of death results in avoidance. A 2022 survey by life insurance providers documented that Americans would rather talk about money, sex, and politics than death. While they're thinking about it more, Americans still don't want to talk about it. When asked to rank their willingness to talk about traditionally taboo topics, 81% of Americans chose money, followed by mental health, 58%, sex, 46%, politics, 42%, religion, 41%, and death was last at 32%. Only about 1/3 of Americans have completed their advance directives, despite the fact that advanced care planning enables people to make informed healthcare decisions, supports the delivery of high quality care, and a more effective utilization of healthcare services. Studies have also shown that advanced care planning improves quality of care and patient outcomes. Still not enough good reasons to do your own advanced care planning? How about 14 more that are supported by scientific research? 1, they enable healthcare professionals to conduct structured, meaningful conversations with patients about their wishes and preferences regarding treatment goals, preferences, and location of care. 2, they promote patient-centered care by focusing on the patient's personal preferences about their medical care and treatments. 3, it helps ensure that patients receive the care that is consistent with their preferences. 4, raises the likelihood that healthcare providers and families understand and comply with the patient's preferences for medical care when the patient lacks decision-making capacity. 5, it increases the probability that patients with life-limiting illnesses can die in their preferred place, such as home. 6, it allows healthcare professionals and caregivers to proactively arrange for patients near the end of life to remain at home, in a nursing home, or in a hospice facility, rather than going to the hospital. Remember, every time you go to the hospital, they're going to want to do stuff. And if that's not what you want, then you don't go to the hospital. 7, it reduces the decisional burden on families as to whether they're making decisions that are consistent with the preferences of a loved one. There's nothing worse than seeing a family saying, I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. I don't know what she would have wanted. And then feeling that no matter what decision they make, they're going to feel guilty about it for the rest of their life. 8, it improves the bereavement experience of families by reducing stress, anxiety, and depression after a loved one's death. I mean, if you know that you're doing what it is that mom and dad wanted, then your grieving process will be so much easier as opposed to feeling like, oh my God, I killed my mom. 9, it enhances the family satisfaction with end-of-life care and understanding of what to expect during a loved one's dying process. You know, we read, I've said this before, we read what to expect when you're expecting so that you know what to expect when you're going to have a baby. But we don't want to educate ourselves about what to expect during the dying process. And even though we know, and we're probably preaching to the choir because you're listening to this, we know people really don't want to learn more about it. Or if they do want to learn more about it, they say, oh, well, I really don't know how to learn more. But we're here, so you can. And it positively impacts quality of life and end-of-life care by preventing unwanted hospitalizations and increases the utilization of palliative and hospice services. Remember, palliative care is pain and symptom management for anybody who has life-limiting or life-threatening illnesses. You don't have to be dying. You don't have to be in hospice in order to get palliative care. Hospice care is for the last 6 months of life. 11. It diminishes the use of aggressive or intensive treatments at the end of life and reduces the number or length of hospital admissions. So if you don't want to die in an ICU with a tube down your throat on a ventilator, then do your advance directives so that they know we're not going to resuscitate this person. We're not going to intubate this person. We're not going to do these extraordinarily technological and painful things to allow people to die at home or wherever it is that they wish. Well, it decreases in hospital and intensive care unit deaths, right? If you say, I don't want this stuff, then you're not going to die in the ICU. 13, it reduces the cost of end-of-life care without increasing mortality, meaning we can spend less money, but you're not going to die quicker. In fact, people who go to hospices, there are studies that show this, the symptoms get under control, they're sleeping better, and they live longer and more comfortably and have a better quality of life and time with their families. And lastly, 14, improves end-of-life care for individuals with dementia by allowing them to express their care preferences before cognitive function deteriorates to the point that they're unable to make their own medical decisions. Now, not talking about death is not going to make it go away. And talking about that death is not going to make it happen. Forms for wills and advance directives are available online. You can go to a lawyer and have them fill out everything you need. It hurts less than a root canal. Now, it hurts less than a root canal, and once it's done, you'll likely feel some great sense of relief that it's over, an accomplishment that you did something you really didn't want to do. There are plenty of resources available to help people to do an advance directive or advanced care planning. The paperwork is straightforward. Advance directives no longer need to be notarized. You don't even have to leave your house to do that. Planning what you want to have happen to your body has a wide range of options. I've had so many people tell me that their family knows what to do, when in fact the family has no idea what to do because they've never talked about it. Honestly, make it easy on your loved ones. Pre-plan, prepay, put it all in a file, and tell like 3 people where the file is, because people are forgetful, and out of those 3, 1 should be able to find it. Then there's all your stuff. We have podcasts about all these topics, including what to do with stuff. Your kids really don't want your stuff. If there's something that they want, consider giving it to them now. I've started to do that, and it feels good to see them enjoy it rather than wonder if it's all going to end up in a dumpster, which I've seen happen, so be warned. You know, I've been a nurse a long time. I worked in hospice, at a cancer center, at different hospitals. I've had to deal with so many families totally adrift and surprised by the situation that they find themselves in. Having a loved one terminally ill and die actually takes about all the emotional bandwidth that we have. And then on top of that, because we refused to, didn't want to, didn't have time to, or anything else we happen to tell ourselves, our family is now expected to sort is often devastating. And as a family, dealing with our emotional reaction through thousands of details about our lives that we've not attended to. Sure, let's dump all of that on them while they're grieving and upset about our loss. Perhaps they're being angry with us for our lack of planning. We'll give them something else to think about rather than the fact that they no longer have us in their lives. Now, life is hard. Loss is hard. Grief is hard. A final gift we can offer those who love us is to have our paperwork in order so they do not have to expend their energy on these details. Be the person that has things organized so that you can awe your family with how much hard work you are willing to do to make their lives a bit easier. Don't give them a reason to curse you. Do the difficult thing. Just do it. Charlie, thoughts?
Um, one or two. Uh, yeah, to your point, you know, figure out what you want, what you want, what you want for the end of your life. And then, for Pete's sake, let people know. Um, and I remember, you brought up the proxy. In some parts of the country, it's um, POA.
Power of attorney.
Thank you. Jeez. Power of attorney over a person. It's the same thing, a healthcare proxy. Please make sure when you have set in your mind what you want, how you want to die, you have that advocate, that person who's your power of attorney, who is your healthcare proxy, who will follow through, who will not allow family members to try to change your mind, who maybe will run into doctors or nurses who say, oh, no, 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 it's not time yet. I can do something. We can intubate the person. While the person made it very clear they want no intubation. It's that please have that person who will speak for you when you can't. That's my biggest thing. And of course, everything Marianne said about those documents. Please get those documents. Every state, there is not one national healthcare proxy. So just Google it for your state. I mean, search for it for your state. Your state's documents for, living will, healthcare proxy, etc. Marianne, how is there a way you bring this up to people? I bring it up all the time.
Yeah, I do too. So,
Yeah.
and
What's
that's where people will
uh,
say, "Oh, my family knows what to do," and I'll say, "Well, how do they know?"
Mhm.
Oh, well,
Oh, I don't.
they just know me.
Yeah, yeah. I don't even ask how do they know. I ask, oh, great. What is it? And literally about 50% of the time, they do not have an answer.
Mm-hmm.
Or oh, well, I mean, I'm thinking about it. It's just little things like that. And I love meeting new people because I always, I'll go with, so what do you do? Well, let's see. I do some acting. I teach English as a second language. I do editing. I take a beat. And I have a podcast I co-host called Everyone Dies. That gets people's attention. And it's everything from, oh my God, that's so morbid, that's gross. And that's just, well, how is you determining how you want to die gross? How, and the conversations begin. But and yeah, I mean, supposedly liberal New York City, people do not want to discuss this.
I don't think it's
Too bad.
I don't think it's about politics. I think it's about just our own.
Oh no, when I say
and
liberal, I'm not talking about politics. Supposedly, anything goes here. It doesn't, but people still have that image.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, April 16th is National Healthcare Decisions Day, so that's a perfect time for people to join together, learn about advanced care planning, and get her done, as we say here in Oklahoma. Let's get her done.
What comedian said that? There was a group of four of these guys.
I don't know. They say it all the time here.
Yeah, it was one of his catchphrases. I'm sorry, April 16th. What is that? What should be in a holiday?
It's National
What's it
Healthcare
called?
Decisions Day. National Healthcare Decisions Day.
Decisions.
And, it's not just Charlie who, should be talking with friends and strangers about advanced directives. Let's all make everybody uncomfortable and bring it up.
Yeah. Uncomfortable, but also the flip side too. Enlightened. Thank you. That's what I was looking for. Yeah, enlightened.
Well, the thing is that they can be uncomfortable for a few minutes and learn something and maybe go and actually do it, or
Yes.
they could be really uncomfortable at the end of life having interventions that they wouldn't have wanted if they had thought about it, and dying in an ICU, which is, not the best place to die if like if you know that you're really sick. I mean, if you've had an accident or something, well then that's a good place to be.
You know what? You brought up about, people prefer to die at home, and I understand that. Um, but Marianne, but if someone is very sick or just can get better care in a hospital, I understand they would prefer to die at home, but is there ever in circumstances where it'd be better for the person to be in the hospital? I mean, to die in a hospital rather than home?
Well, I mean, of course, there's probably situations where that's true. Sometimes people, there's beliefs about it. If you die in the home, then you got to sell the house or burn it down, or something that there's superstitions about that.
Right.
If
That's so,
somebody's having
yeah.
so with pain management that needs like 24-hour monitoring, and the family just can't do that, well then that's a reason. There's always possible reasons, but that's a whole other issue than saying I don't really know what they want, and so let's
Mhm.
resuscitate them anyway just in case.
Ugh.
And then they end up in the ICU, and then there's no other option after that, because once you're intubated in the ICU, that's, if you're at the end of life, that's where you're going to die.
Ugh.
So,
Yeah, that's on mine. Absolutely no intubation at all. I
well,
don't.
you've got like a line of friends willing to, pull the plug for you. So
Yes.
you're all set.
Ah, life and death as it should be.
But, it's, I say that, tongue in cheek. It's not about pulling the plug. It's about following what people want and having, we live our lives hopefully consistent in a way that we're true to ourselves, and we should be able to die in the same way.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. For our third half, we have an original approach to advanced care planning. Marianne, do we know who this is from?
Yes, but I'm not saying.
Very good.
A friend of mine gave this to a bunch of us, and if you knew this person, you would say, "Oh my God, this is so consistent with the way they are."
Mhm.
And so when we decided to do this show, said this is a perfect sort of example of you don't have to get bogged in paperwork in order to express what you want.
Very good. Here we go. Over the past 2 weeks, my wife and I made several trips to visit her 83-year-old father, who was in an ICU 3 hours away with pneumonia and sepsis. Last week, after multiple family discussions, we all agreed to move him to a nursing facility on hospice, where he died peacefully the next day. The day after that, my previously healthy 89-year-old father fell in his backyard, hitting his head on a brick walk. A few hours later, he was on a ventilator, again about a 3 hour drive from our home, with a hematoma in his neck that was compressing his airway. After 72 scary hours, he has been extubated and is doing well at present. When I got back home last night, I wrote this letter to my wife and 2 daughters. These instructions will not be right for everyone. What would you change to make it work for you? Dear girls, with Grandpa's death last week and my dad's current hospital stay, I am reminded that death is always near, so it seems proper to make what plans one can. As you know, I have talked about much of this before and filled out some forms, but here it is in more detail. If I am very ill and cannot communicate my wishes, 1. First, make sure communication efforts are pursued with adequate energy and diligence. Persons who are critically ill but who still have cognitive capacity and decision-making ability are sometimes not addressed directly because it seems too difficult or uncertain to get through, or because of wishes, understandable but misguided, I think, to spare them the mental stress. One of my fears of being on a ventilator is not being able to convey my wishes, such as my nose itches, or my feet are cold, or make that machine stop beeping, or tell me my condition and prognosis as clearly and completely as you can. I'm pretty sure hearing someone say, "It's not your time," or "We're not going to let you go," would not be comforting or helpful to me. I might be groggy or confused, so orienting statements, where I am, what day it is, how I got there, and repetition are useful. Number 2, please make sure my comfort is aggressively optimized. 2A, ask me if I have pain and if I want something for that. If I do, ask the nurse to treat it. If there are barriers, be polite but persistent. In most cases, can you please contact the physician? We'll get as quick a response as, "I have a sharp object in my purse and I will use it," and is less likely to lead to subsequent complications and delays. 2B, I would like to listen to music of my liking. Good choices for me include Beatles, Coldplay, TMBG, Elliott Smith, the Decemberists, Bach, and Beethoven. There's a playlist on my iPhone entitled "If I'm Sick." It's possible I would like some selections of C&W, disco, or hip hop, but why take a chance? 2C, please avoid or minimize the use of restraints. Occasionally, those are necessary to prevent a delirious patient from pulling out tubes, but they are potentially dangerous and antithetical to comfort. Even if required, they can generally be removed while someone is present who can ensure that the patient does not pull on the wrong thing. If the nurse objects, be polite but persistent. Just in case, keep a sharp object in your purse. Number 3, regarding the use of life-sustaining interventions, I want the same thing that most people want. If a particular intervention is reasonably likely to help, use it, but not otherwise. Of course, there are two tricky parts to this expression. 3A, help. What does that mean? For this context, I defined it thus: get me to a point where I can enjoy life and interact meaningfully with loved ones. I'm sure you recognize this is different from keep me alive. 3B, is reasonably likely to. This is not so much a problem of definition as it is a problem of determination. If you want something concrete, the default definition should be provides at least a 10% chance of, adjusted as necessary. For example, use a bigger number for a more burdensome intervention. In most cases, there is no consistent or agreed on approach to deciding the likelihood of benefit from a particular procedure or medication or plan. Doctors make their estimates based on experience and personal worldview. However, the situation is not as hopeless as this might suggest. If in doubt, it's often possible to give a time-limited trial, say 12 hours or 48 hours, depending on the predicted response trajectory, and then withdraw the intervention if there's no satisfactory response by the agreed-on deadline. I know it's not as simple as I've presented, but this at least provides a strategy. 3C, Here's some additional guidance for specific situations. 1. If I have metastatic cancer, a large stroke, advancing dementia, or another condition with poor chance of survival, I want only comfort. If I wake up, I can always countermand this instruction, then if I choose. 2. I want artificial nutrition and hydration only if they're reasonably likely to help. See above. Or if they are required to optimize comfort, which is rarely the case. To be more specific, if I have been persistently unconscious for more than a week with little prospect of recovery, I do not want enteral or parenteral nutrition or hydration started or continued. This can be used as a guide for other situations that are similar to, but not exactly like this. This may seem a bit gruesome, but it actually feels liberating to me. And I hope it's not too discomforting for you. Let me know if you have any questions. Maybe next time I'll talk about my wishes regarding funeral plans. I wonder if Father Patrick would allow fireworks in the nave. Love, Dad.
What do you think of that?
Hats off to, I assume it is a gentleman. Well, since it says Dad, sure. Terrific. Take notes, folks. Whittle it down. Little footnote thing, little bullet points. This is terrific. Exactly. Figure out what you want. Let people know.
And it's in his own words.
Mm-hmm.
He can sign it. He can attach it to the form, but it's there, and they don't have to guess. They don't have to wonder.
Right. And I really, and I've said this to my, to my siblings, and you know it too, Marianne. If you want to, if you feel it's time to pull the plug, pull the plug. If you think, oh, wait a minute, there's a chance here, Charlie has one foot in the grave, but the other one is in a banana peel and he hasn't slipped yet. Yeah, let's see what happens after 1 or 2 days. And I trust my siblings and you will realize, yeah, it's time to pull the plug. We gave it a couple of days. Well, here I have said it, folks. The shot heard around the world. Yeah.
The whole world knows now.
Yes. It's just that. Have somebody who's, is not going to get freaky about it. Of course, there will be mixed emotions, but hey, it's your death and you'll die as you want to.
Well, hopefully, if you do this, you're planning, you'll die. Yes. You die as you want to. If you don't do it, you'll die as somebody else wants to.
Yes.
And, as far as we know, we die once. So, you're not going to get a do-over on that one.
So kill me once and kill me twice. Now, it doesn't really fit. Kill me once and kill me twice. But, know what you want.
That didn't stop you from singing it.
No, it didn't. And that's it for this week's episode. Please stay tuned for the continuing saga of Everyone Dies. And thank you for listening. This is Charlie Navarrete. And in a greeting card from Trash Talk by Annie, you may be getting older, but you still have a lot to offer society. Your organs, for instance.
And I'm Marianne Matzo. We'll see you next week. Remember, every day is a gift.
This podcast does not provide medical advice. All discussion on this podcast, such as treatments, dosages, outcomes, charts, patient profiles, advice, messages, and any other discussion are for informational purposes only and are not a substitute for professional medical advice or treatment. Always seek the advice of your primary care practitioner or other qualified health providers with any questions that you may have regarding your health. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard from this podcast. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or 911 immediately. Everyone Dies does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, practitioners, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned in this podcast. Reliance on any information provided in this podcast by persons appearing on this podcast at the invitation of Everyone Dies or by other members is solely at your own risk.